January 1942, Richmond, California. The night sky glowed orange above the San Francisco Bay. It wasn't fire. It was industry. Miles of steel skeletons lined the waterfront, cranes swinging under floodlights, welders throwing sparks that lit up the fog like lightning. The air thrummed with machinery, hammers, engines, steel presses, a heartbeat of war echoing across the Pacific coast. From the catwalk of yard number 3, a man in a hard hat and rolled-up sleeves watched it all unfold. His name was Henry J. Kaiser, a construction magnate, not a naval man. And he was about to do something that would change shipbuilding forever. Below him, thousands of men and women moved like clockwork. Steel fitters, welders, pipe layers, painters, many of them civilians who'd never seen a ship before this war. Some were former housewives, others farmhands, some barely old enough to shave. Yet here they were, building the lifeline of an army an ocean away. A young foreman ran up, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Kaiser, hull 440's ahead of schedule again. We're laying the keel for 441 tonight." Kaiser grinned beneath his safety goggles. "Good," he said. "Then tomorrow, we'll make it 2. The Navy had told him it couldn't be done. That shipbuilding was too technical, too slow, too precise to be handled by civilians. But America was losing ships faster than it could build them. Tankers, freighters, destroyers sunk by German U-boats faster than they could be replaced. At the start of 1942, Allied convoys were bleeding to death in the Atlantic. Merchant ships carried the lifeblood of the war: fuel, food, ammunition, trucks, tanks. And every night, dozens went down in flames. Admiral Ernest King himself said, "We're fighting a battle of supply. Lose that, and we lose everything." So the call went out. Build ships, fast. The Maritime Commission wanted cargo ships that were cheap, durable, and simple. Floating workhorses that could carry 10,000 tons and survive a torpedo long enough for the crew to escape. The blueprints were old, a British design from the 1870s, but Kaiser didn't care. To him, simplicity was the key. He walked the catwalk like a general on the front lines. "We're not building yachts," he told his foreman. "We're building steel boxes that float, and the sooner they float, the sooner boys on the front get what they need." To the seasoned naval engineers, his methods were heresy. Ship hulls were supposed to be riveted, thousands of steel pins hammered by hand, a process that took months. But Kaiser had other ideas. He believed in welding, a process borrowed from the auto and bridge industries, electric arcs melting steel together instead of fastening it with rivets. It was faster, cheaper, and didn't require the back-breaking labor of teams of riveters. But it was also untested at this scale. The Navy scoffed. Welding caused metal fatigue, they said. Welds cracked under pressure. Kaiser didn't argue. He just proved them wrong. Within weeks, his shipyards, built from scratch in record time, began producing vessels unlike anything seen before. The Liberty ships, as they were called, were ugly, boxy, and slow. Barely 11 knots at full steam. But they were miracles of production. Each one took less time to build than the last. In January, it took 230 days to complete one. By summer, 70. By the end of the year, less than 30. Now, in the winter chill of 1942, welders leaned into their arcs, the air alive with the hiss of molten metal. Sparks flew against the night, raining down like stars over the half-finished hulls. The noise was deafening, but the rhythm was hypnotic. The sound of an industrial army at war. A worker wiped sweat from his face and looked up at the banner hanging over the yard gates. "Speed means victory." The war had its battlefields: Stalingrad, El Alamein, Guadalcanal. But here, on the California coast, Henry Kaiser had built one of his own. And in his battle, every second counted. March 1942, Washington, D.C. The conference room inside the U.S. Maritime Commission was tense. Charts, ship diagrams, and production reports were scattered across the polished table. At the head sat Admiral Emory Land, the man tasked with overseeing the nation's merchant fleet. And across from him, smiling as if nothing were wrong, sat Henry Kaiser. "Mr. Kaiser," Land said flatly, "your proposal reads like fantasy. No naval architect has ever produced ships at the rate you're claiming." Kaiser leaned forward, his voice calm but certain. "That's because no one's ever tried it my way, Admiral." Land sighed, rubbing his temples. "You're a construction man. You build dams, bridges, not warships." "Exactly," Kaiser replied. "And that's why I'll build them faster." He pointed to a schematic spread across the table, a Liberty ship split into modular sections. "We'll build them like automobiles," he explained. "Each yard assembles parts in parallel, hull sections, decks, cabins, then weld them together in sequence. No bottlenecks, no waiting on riveters." The admirals exchanged skeptical glances. Kaiser could feel their doubt, the disbelief that a civilian, a man without naval rank or engineering pedigree, could rewrite the rules of shipbuilding. One of them muttered, "You'll sink the first ship before it leaves the dock." Kaiser smiled faintly. "Then I'll build 2 to replace it." He left the room with a handshake and a contract for 27 ships, a test run. The skeptics expected failure. What they got instead was revolution. By summer, Kaiser's first Liberty ships slid down the ways at his Richmond and Portland yards. The Patrick Henry, christened with a bottle of water — Kaiser refused to waste champagne — was completed in just over 4 months. When it launched, Kaiser stood at the railing, hands in his pockets, as the giant steel hull hit the water with a thunderous splash. Reporters asked how he'd done it. Kaiser grinned. "Organization and faith in people," he said. "We don't build ships, we build shipbuilders." Inside the yards, training schools ran around the clock, teaching thousands of workers, many of them women, how to weld. They worked in shifts, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Posters hung above the entrances. "The sun never sets on Kaiser shipyards." Under the glare of floodlights, the yards became living cities. Canteens fed 20,000 meals a day. Childcare centers and hospitals were built on site, unheard of in wartime industry. Entire families lived by the rhythm of production: eat, sleep, weld, repeat. And the ships kept coming. Each Liberty ship weighed 14,000 tons, 441 feet long, built of 100,000 pieces of steel. They weren't elegant, but they were unstoppable. Floating warehouses that could carry everything from trucks to tanks to locomotives. And every one of them bore the mark of Kaiser's miracle welds. By the end of 1942, the skeptics were silent. Liberty ships were leaving the docks faster than U-boats could sink them. When one Navy inspector marveled at a vessel completed in under 3 weeks, Kaiser simply said, "You think that's fast? Wait till next year." He wasn't joking. November 1942, Richmond Shipyard, No. 2. It began as a dare, a challenge from a reporter who didn't believe the rumors that Kaiser's shipyards could build a Liberty ship faster than anyone on Earth. The average yard still took weeks. Kaiser's crew said they could do it in 4 days. Kaiser smiled when he heard the doubt. "Then let's prove it." For 4 days and nights, the yard became a frenzy. Over 3,000 men and women worked in shifts, their sparks lighting the ship like a forge. Floodlights bathed the hull as welders climbed scaffolds, sealing seams faster than inspectors could count. By the fourth morning, November 12, 1942, the Robert E. Peary stood ready, a 14,000-ton Liberty ship completed in 4 days, 15 hours, and 29 minutes. When it launched, Kaiser himself watched from the pier, arms folded, as the crowd roared. Sirens wailed, whistles blew, and the banner unfurled across her bow. Built in 4 days. The Kaiser way. Even the Navy was stunned. The Peary wasn't a stunt. She was seaworthy. Within weeks, she was crossing the Pacific, loaded with supplies bound for Australia. That same month, a convoy commander radioed back to Washington. "We're not losing the Atlantic anymore. We're outbuilding them." And he was right. The U-boat wolf packs could no longer keep pace. For every ship they sank, America built 2 more. By 1943, Liberty ships were rolling out at 1 every 3 to 4 days, 2,700 in total by war's end. They carried everything: Sherman tanks to Normandy, grain to starving Britain, gasoline to North Africa, even locomotives to rebuild Europe. Each one, plain and unglamorous, bore the signature of a workforce that had learned to turn steel into salvation. In the press, they called them Kaiser's miracles. In the fleet, they called them lifelines. August 1945, Richmond, California. The war was over. The shipyards were quiet now, cranes idle, the floodlights dark. The ghosts of 1,000 hammer blows seemed to echo in the silence. Henry Kaiser stood alone at the edge of dry dock number 3, watching the bay. Where once his shipyards had burned with energy, now only gulls circled above the rusting hulks. But he didn't see an ending. He saw proof that civilians could win a war as surely as soldiers. He had started the war with no naval experience. He ended it as the man who built one of the largest merchant fleets in history. Behind him, a row of Liberty ship plates gleamed in the afternoon sun, engraved with the names of every vessel his yards had launched: Patrick Henry, Jeremiah O'Brien, Robert E. Peary, steel names for steel ships. When a reporter asked how he'd done it, Kaiser just smiled. "By believing," he said. "Believing that ordinary people can do extraordinary things, if you give them the chance." In total, his yards had launched 1,190 ships on the West Coast alone. The rest, built at partner yards following his methods, brought the number to nearly 2,700. No other industrial effort in history matched that speed. Welding, once dismissed as reckless, became the standard for shipbuilding worldwide. And the workforce he'd assembled, men, women, black, white, immigrants, and farmers, became a symbol of what America could be when united by purpose. Years later, when the Cold War began, American shipyards still used Kaiser's methods. His hospitals, born from wartime necessity, evolved into the Kaiser Permanente health system, another empire built on efficiency, compassion, and innovation. The Liberty ships themselves sailed on for decades. Some carried cargo into the 1970s. Others rusted away in distant ports, their hulls still bearing faint weld lines, reminders of the miracle that kept freedom afloat. At the National Maritime Museum in San Francisco, one surviving Liberty ship, the SS Jeremiah O'Brien, still floats today. Her decks hum with tourists and the creak of steel, and if you listen closely, you can almost hear it. The faint buzz of welders, the clatter of hammers, the rhythm of 1942. The sound of a nation that built its victory from sparks and steel. The sound of Henry Kaiser's dream, forged in fire, welded into history.